Okay. Thank you all so much for being here today. A quick introduction to this meeting. My name is Carmel. I am a volunteer for the events team of Women in Geospatial, which is probably how most of you found this event. But if you came from not knowing or from a different place, um, Women Geospatial is a global professional network of more than 5,000 women from 149 countries. We run an active community on the Circle platform and on LinkedIn, where you can connect with other professionals, ask for advice, hear about job opportunities, and attend events just like this one that we host multiple times per year. We also run a mentorship program. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, all you have to do is look for Women in Geospatial on the internet, find our website or on LinkedIn, and you can get involved. Um, Today, we have a very exciting presentation, um, and we will start it in just a minute. But before we do, a quick advice on questions. There will be interactive moments in the presentation when Jane will ask for your feedback or your thoughts. Feel free to post them in the chat here on Zoom on the side. And we will read them and get your feedback. But there will also be time for general Q&A questions at the end. So I would say if you have questions throughout the presentation, write them down, save them. We'll ask for all of them at the end. And that's when Jane will look through them and answer your questions. Make sure we have time for everything. That's all I have to say. Jane, you can take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Um, Lovely to meet you all. I just saw a wonderful array of names here in front of me, and I can only assume that we've got several different countries here. I'm dying to know where you're all from. I'm here in the UK, in the southwest of the UK, which is uncharacteristically sunny, although freezing on my side of the house. So forgive me if I go blue, while I'm doing my presentation to you. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Oh, I need permission to share there. Okay, I'm going to present. Can you see a slide deck there? Carmel, can you just confirm?
Yes, so we can see your deck.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, so my name is Jane Franklin, and I met Julia Vargaman at an event last summer. We got to talking, and I explained what I do. I work in marketing, and we talked about careers and how the world is changing. And I said, "Oh, well, we've got a presentation, a little workshop we've run previously for people, which is about building your personal profile online. Do you think your network might be interested?" And she said, "Oh, yes, that sounds great." So I said, "Great." So I thought I would just dust off my slides and present to you. But in dusting off those slides, I realized I hadn't actually presented it for 2 years. And in that time, such a lot has changed. So there's actually quite a lot of new material in here. So I'm going to ask you to forgive me if I am not as slick as I have been with this step before. Um, so let's just get stuck straight in. So what I said that I would be talking about was how career building is changing in the current world, and thinking about how you can build a digital presence that reflects yourself, and particularly let's deal with that dreadful acronym immediately, AI. What are we going to do about it? I'm going to talk about LinkedIn, and I'm going to give you three takeaway actions. And as Carmel said, it'd be great to save those questions for the end, but there are a couple of points where I want to ask your advice because I'm not a GIS expert, can't even say it. I am geo adjacent, as I'll explain in a second, um, but I'm not deep in your world. So I think there are some questions I have to ask you where you can educate me a little bit. No one has all the answers. And I'm really interested if you can share your insights and experience at the end when we ask questions. Again, because there's lots that you guys know that I don't, but hopefully I can share some stuff with you that you'll find useful today. So, a little bit about me, very quickly. Difference Engine, it's a marketing agency. We mostly do digital advertising, which is informed by a bit of customer research at the front end, which is unusual for marketing in a lot of cases. I have deep experience. I've been around the block a few times, as we say here in the UK. And I have a lot of experience in the geospatial world and the spatial world. I work with Geovation, for example, which is an accelerator looking at geotech and prop tech startups. I've worked with Ordnance Survey. So that's why I have a particular interest in Women in GIS, which is a great organisation. I was very pleased to see you won an award at the Innovation Awards last year. This is a little bit about what we do. I won't labour the point. If you're interested, it's in the deck and I'll share that with you afterwards. So, how career building is changing. So, I guess what I would like to say before I continue is that um, a lot of my information is English language first biased. It is UK biased, but I did look to find global and international information where I could. So do bear with me. But what we'll spend a lot of time talking about are actually tools that are pretty international and pretty well used across the globe. But that is something I will ask you about as we get into it. So, what's changed? I called this the 2025 edit because at the moment things seem to be changing so quickly. I can only imagine that 2026 will look very different again. There's an awful lot of words on this slide, and again, you can read these later. And I think the first point we probably don't need to go into too much. You're probably all sitting there trying to work out what on earth is going on with things like the global economy, for example, but certainly technological change. And we're going to focus on technological change, I think, a lot in this session today. It's also clear there's an incredible amount of job market volatility out there. Um, we've had major global shocks like COVID, which we're still trying to get over the impacts that's had on the workforce. And AI and automation are really only beginning to start kicking in terms of the impact that they're going to have. So there's a lot of people applying for not so many jobs. There are jobs where people are thinking, will this role still be around in 2 years, 5 years? And there's an awful lot of people talking about a skills shortage in the market. So one thing we do know is that data and cybersecurity look like roles where there will be continued demand, but we're feeling that when you look around, there just aren't enough people with the right skills to fill those roles. Um, and I think it's interesting thinking about GIS and you guys out there because I think the focus on data is something that if it doesn't make your job more secure, at least it gives you room to play where other people can't necessarily. Um, Other things that we need to think about is absolute attention overload, just the sheer deluge of content that people have to deal with on a daily basis. And in a world where we're very hybrid in the way that we work, an awful lot of it is online. How do we get through? How do we actually connect in that space? And then finally, recruitment is absolutely online first and increasingly AI led. I was quite surprised by these stats that show us that already AI is being used by more than 90% of employers. So it's completely out there, and how you can get cut through and stand out to both algorithms and human beings is tricky. Um, but it's something that we're going to look at in this session and hopefully get a little bit further along our thinking with. Um, so, recruitment is absolutely in flux. I thought this was very interesting from the World Economic Forum. This is a report that's just come out last month, and they surveyed a whole range of organizations around the world, talking about future careers. And I found it really interesting that in 2025, nine out of the 10 top 10 skills that are required in roles were soft skills. I found that really interesting. And number six, I think, is probably the closest to a hard skill in technological literacy. And then if you look at what they're expecting to see the fastest growing skills in the next 5 years, it completely changes around. Um, and we have right at the top three hard skills, data focused hard skills at the top there. So interesting. And it's no wonder in that context that what we're looking for in 2025 is resilience and flexibility, and certainly importantly for what we're talking about, leadership and social influence. So I'm not sure how weighted these responses are, so I have maybe played a little bit fast and loose with this data. But I think what it shows me is that this exercise that we're undertaking now about how to put your personal brand into this, very much about that leadership and social influence thing that hopefully will set you in good stead talking to employers and building your career now and for the future. So let's get stuck into the dreadful artificial intelligence that we're all expecting to talk about, how it's being used today. So it's embedded right now in every stage of recruitment, certainly in the first instance, in that first round of sourcing candidates, um, filtering them down to the first round of people, and even through to that first round of interviews. So there's been a lot of work around using the AI tools in existence today to screen through CVs and applications and sites like LinkedIn, which is not yielding great efficiency. There's a lot of complaints about how that's working currently. It doesn't pick up everything. But it also absolutely underlines the importance of thinking about keywords. And if there's one thing that I hope you walk away from this session thinking about, it's that keywords are absolutely critical. Keywords, from a marketing perspective, really took on a life of their own when search engines and search engine optimization became increasingly important. Effectively, a keyword is a term that enables your content to get found. And finding the right keywords will enable AI crawlers that are going through LinkedIn, AI scanning tools that are going through CVs, spot that you have the right skills and attributes for a role. So keywords, absolutely critical. I'm aware that there are regional variations in how AI is used in recruitment, as you can see here. Germany and the EU typically have stronger regulation around data privacy in AI. If you look at the UK, very similar to the US in our approach, and in Asia Pacific, I think it's quite different market by market. Um, I'd be very interested at this point to hear what people think and if they've seen AI in use in their hiring processes so far, and whether they what they think of what they've heard so far about that.
If anyone has thoughts about that question, you can write it in the messages on the side and we'll read them out loud.
I'll give you a moment for that to get typing. Um, while you're thinking about that, I'll just hop to my next slide because I'm conscious of time and I really want to make sure we've got time for questions at the end. But please do share your thoughts because I'm really interested to know. Um, so in my search, thinking about AI and how it's impacted things, I saw this phrase which I thought was very useful, and I stole it and used it as my title here. LinkedIn, the talent search engine, which is a really interesting way of thinking about it. Um, so when you look at it as a search engine, what happens is a recruiter will enter a query. They might be looking for a talent or a skill, and LinkedIn will return a ranked list of profiles deemed most relevant. Going back to that SEO idea that I mentioned before. We all used to talk about how you could be on page one of the Google results. The challenge now is to be on page one of the LinkedIn recruitment search. Um, LinkedIn says, and this is a quote, candidates that match the request are selected and then ranked based on a variety of factors, such as the similarity of their work experience and skills within the search criteria, job posting location, and the likelihood of a response from an interested candidate. So, what they're looking for there is not only those skills that we've talked about, those keywords that I've mentioned, but also how active and engaged you are on LinkedIn. Really interesting. Inactive profiles get degraded and come further down the list. And this is important in a world where thousands of people are applying for roles. I think there was a scary number that said um, it was Google in 2024 had 3 million people apply to work for them. That is an incredible amount of CVs to sift through. So the key factors that can really influence your ranking on LinkedIn are making sure those keywords are there. Um, Missing them makes you a weak match. Um, it's really looking for people who are active, who are posting, who are commenting, who are engaging on LinkedIn. Um, it's looking for people who have more connections. So not just the volume of connections, but also you'll find yourself appearing further up the search results if you are connected in the same network as the recruiter. So if you're in the first round of first degree of connections with the recruiter, you will be pushed further up those search results. Um, and profile freshness is really important. So regularly updating your profile. Part of the reason it took me a while to put this presentation together was because I obviously looked at my own profile and found, oh yes, I can tweak that. I can tweak this. So always lots of little bits you can just change to keep your profile fresh. The algorithm really favors profiles that show recent activity. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I found that really interesting to think about these hard skills that uh, and keywords that LinkedIn is looking for. I've just seen a comment here. Perhaps as a backlash, I've also seen job application processes ask job seekers to certify that they did not use AI in some parts of the applications. Ironically, saw this for an AI company as well. Very interesting. Yes, absolutely. It cuts both ways. I've been thinking about this from the perspective of somebody who is looking to develop their career. But if you're a hiring manager, um, much like students and lecturers these days, it's important to make sure that if you do use AI, that you're not just simply plagiarizing or copy and pasting. Thanks for that comment. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the hard skills that and the keywords it's important to communicate in your online profile, but it's more than that. So a lot of the information I just shared with you is from a report from the World Economic Forum, and that data also backs up the fact that in order to feel confident about a recruitment, hiring managers want to see the whole person. So um, before you get a role, before you're screened for it, um, and after you're screened for it, it's really important to communicate all the other stuff that keywords can't convey, all of the soft stuff, or the things that communicate who you are. And I've shared here some thoughts about what hiring managers are actually looking for. Um, and it's important to remember these are human beings. Number one, interest in my company. If I don't feel like you love my company or will love my company as much as I do, I'm probably less interested in you. Um, Obviously, hard skills that we've talked about, technical skills, definitely work experience, but also particularly for the more junior job seekers and career developers, communicating your across those basic work management skills is really important. Academic record, of course, but also the potential to get results. Um, and the soft skills piece. I mean, it was interesting in those charts that I showed you before how many soft skills are important. And in a AI and automated world, those soft skills become even more important. So thinking about how you can communicate them is really key. Um, so coming to people with solutions, people management, that kind of thing. Um, Also your attitude, will you ask questions? Will you um, find out how things work? Do you have that drive to succeed? Um, and then finally, personality. I always loved this question when I was hiring people. I would ask myself, could I sit next to this person on a long distance flight? Really important. Often, particularly younger, like grad profiles, they focus on the academics and work experience and they miss all of this other lovely stuff that's important to communicate. So, what does this mean for you? There we go. You're going to get bored of me saying this. Keywords. Um, the right keywords are critical as AI screens for them. It's really important that you stay visible and active. That engagement is really important. But increasingly, demonstrating what AI can't do, highlighting those human skills, and also thinking about how you can position all of that wonderful information about yourself in a story that makes it memorable. You want people to remember you and to be authentic. It's such a lot to ask, I realize, but that's what we want to see in this world. That person, who might sit next to me on a long distance flight, I want to know genuinely who they are and where they come from, why they're a good fit, which leads us on beautifully to the main meat of what we want to talk about today, which is your personal brand. So, a friend of mine said to me the other day, "Oh, I don't do social media. It just reminds me of my mum saying, 'Stop showing off.'" And I think sometimes people feel that that's what we're talking about here. Um, there's a comment here saying, "Can you give examples to how to convey storytelling and authenticity?" I'm hoping I'm going to get to that here, but let's pick up on it again at the end if I haven't got there enough. Um, so why personal brand matters. It's not just showing off, in short. Increasingly, our first connection with somebody is online. Um, and so, what you really want to do is to shape that experience of somebody meeting you for the first time, as you would do if you were going out to a meeting or a date or shopping or whatever you were doing. You would make sure you were appropriately in the right milieu, the right clothes, with the right gear in order to fulfill that job. Um, so that's really what we want to do here is we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to increase visibility, um, increase connections, build your relationships, and be memorable and front of mind for who you are and what is uniquely you. It really matters from that reasons. And so for that very purpose, I think it's differentiation, not empty self-promotion. It is self-promotion to an extent, but it is more about that. It is more about being visible, demonstrating your credibility, and therefore creating opportunities. Opportunity, you have to make opportunity, you have to create luck, and it's about being out there and connected and having those conversations. So what you see here on the right of the slide are personal brand attributes that we want to try and communicate when we're thinking about our personal brand. So we want to communicate awareness, trust, personality, and reputation. And we're going to get stuck into that. So this slide, personal brand foundations, um, is important because I want you to come back to this. And like I say, you can have the slides afterwards so you can use them. Um, this is really important to get clarity around what your personal brand is. So first of all, what is it that you're trying to do? You know, is it that you want to write a book? Is it that you need a new job? Is it that you want to become the leading person in X or Y industry? What is it that you want to do? Because once you're clear on that and what your goal is, then what you work through in these next three blocks, sorry, is different. Um, so that's a really important existential question for you. What is it that you want to achieve in the next year, 2 years, 5 years? The next piece is a wonderful piece of marketing jargon, UVP, or unique value proposition. What makes you one of a kind? I think often people feel like, well, maybe I'm not one of a kind. Maybe I'm just another person, another GIS analyst, or another marketing person, or whatever it is. Maybe I'm not unique. I say, no, that's not true. That's absolutely not true. There are core brand attributes and characteristics that define you. You want to think about those. Um, and so these are the questions that we ask people in my business when we're going out to a company and we want to do their marketing. Then we want to understand, what is it that you do that's different from the competition? You know, who do you solve a problem for? What is that problem? And how do you do it? What makes you different? And I think what makes you different is the whole mix of everything that is within your brand. It is your academics, it is your work experience, but it's also about your personal traits and characteristics. It's about your goals and your values and where you want to go. All of these things brought together. And also that thing that gives you a buzz about your career. There must be something, some reason why you get out of bed in the morning and you go to work. It's more than just paying the bills, hopefully. There's something that you're really good at and you really care about. And bringing all of those things together, that is what your brand is that you're trying to communicate. The next thing you need to think about is, who do you need to build a relationship with? That's very important because you're going to try and connect with them. And then finally, where are they? Where are those people? What are they talking about? And how can you find a way to marry your agenda so that you can start having a conversation with them? Important slide. Please go back to it and just work this one through for yourself. Once you've done that, this is what you're going to be doing. This is the practical stuff of brand building. What are you going to do? You're going to build your network online. You're going to engage with them regularly, and you're going to share your expertise. You can see how you do it there, but why? Why do you do it? Because you'll have a wider employer base, I should say, or employee if you're trying to hire people. You'll be front of mind, and you'll be building your reputation for uniquely who you are and why you are interesting and credible. That's what you'll be doing. So, how do you put that into action? 3 simple steps. First of all, often forgotten, tidy up the past. Um, this is worth thinking about. Just have a little look or get somebody else to have a look at your online estate, different accounts you might have across different platforms. What's public and what's private? Worth having a look at. I don't think you need to just wipe what communicates your life outside of work, because I think that's important. But just make sure it reflects you the way you want to be reflected. I saw this amazing stat um, in my research, which was that 21% of recruiters admit to rejecting a candidate after looking them up on Facebook. And I have to say, I have done that. So it is worth just having a little look and making sure the content that you've got out there passes the sunshine test. Um, Next thing, optimize the present. So have a look at what you've got going on right now. Make sure you are using those channels to the fullest. I can't get into um, the myriad of ways that you can use these platforms in this session, not enough time. But there are people out there. There's a guy called John Espirian on LinkedIn, for example. He's an absolute, in fact, he calls himself a LinkedIn geek. He can share all sorts of information with you. Paola says, who uses Facebook anymore? Good question. Probably not your generation. Some of the older generation do. I think my kids are on there just to talk to my generation. Yeah, but good comment. And then finally, lay the foundations for the future. Once you've worked out what the past is, tidy that up, thought about where you are now, and you've optimized all those profiles to use all the different functionality. Next step, where do you want to get to? And this goes back to the goals that we talked about before. Where do you want to be, and how are you going to use your profile to help you get there? So, your profile. Um, I'm just going to talk very briefly. You can read this at your leisure about LinkedIn. Um, it is the de facto business site. It just is, I think. There are other platforms, and I know other people use them. And certainly in the UK, to that stat up there, you can see 85% of FTSE chief execs, FTSE 100 chief execs now have a presence on LinkedIn. It has really had a moment, I think, post COVID, and it now has, I think, 1.1 billion users around the world. There are other platforms, but I think the thinking that we'll talk through it can be applied to most of them. Um, Most companies are using it for thought leadership, for employer branding, for recruitment, for sales and marketing. You name it. It's a very well trafficked and well used site. So that is where I'm going to focus most of my time for now. So let's have a look at the different use cases for LinkedIn. So these are the four main ones that we think about. Not all of them will be relevant to you and your roles. It depends on where you are in your career. Excuse me. First of all, personal branding. That's what we're talking about today. Then we have content consumption. So really creating content that communicates who you are, but also learning. It's a great place to absorb information and to learn about your sector, the companies you might want to connect with, the influencers you might want to connect with. Obviously, job seeking, and then the final one is ABM. That stands for account-based marketing. It is a great place to communicate with prospects. So if you are in a sales and development role, um, LinkedIn is the number one place to be doing that because the targeting on there far outweighs any other platforms. Okay, so going back to the brand attributes that we mentioned before, what I've done here is I have played fast and loose with a few people's online profiles. So this is Juliet Vargaman, which is how I ended up speaking with you all today. So I hope she doesn't mind that I've used her profile here, but I just wanted to point out um, some great uses of LinkedIn and where we want to get one of those high flying, high star rating LinkedIn profiles that AI tools will be able to crawl and therefore return you highly in the results. Um, so yeah, you can see here the awareness part of the personal brand attributes at the top, who we are. Julia's done a great job there. She's done a beautiful banner there, which I would encourage people to have a think about. And you can see top right, there's a bell on there. That means she has activated her creator status on LinkedIn, which means that people can follow her and get updates when she's shared content. You can see the trust attribute here. She's talking about her credentials, her experience. She's filled that in completely, so you can see what her roles are currently and in the past. Great job there, Julia. I'm moving on now to a chap called Matt Forrest. I don't know if you know this guy. He shares some great content, really interesting. So thank you, Matt, for being our unwitting guinea pig today. You can see here two of the other brand attributes really clearly expressed here. His personality, his about statement is great. I'm passionate about enabling others to use modern GIS. Wonderful. You can see he's also got his content creator profile activated because he's been able to feature content at the top of his profile. And you can also see his activity, which is all video based. So this guy is working it. You can also see his reputation here. He's got skills and people have endorsed him for it. He's won awards. So he's really got an all-star, all-flying LinkedIn profile here. I can't remember how many. Oh, there it's on there, 53,000 followers. That makes him a micro influencer in LinkedIn parlance. So really great example there. Um, and then I've skipped on a little bit faster than I was ready for. This next slide here, I wanted to get stuck into a little bit about what you need to do to build an AI friendly LinkedIn profile. And I've used some people here you may well know. I know at least Mariam is part of Women in Geospatial, so you may know her. Again, thank you, Miranda and Mariam, for unwittingly being my guinea pigs here. Both of them great profiles that are good to learn from. Um, Important here to note, which is really useful because one thing that AI crawlers want is structure. It enables them to understand the information that they're trying to process, headline, all of the keywords in there. No problem at all understanding what Miranda is about there. She's got in hard with a very strong summary. She's using her keywords. So back to the keywords there. There's important things here that she wants to communicate: entrepreneur, CEO, board member, strategist, transformation, innovation, technology. These are all wonderful keywords that are obviously great for communicating who she is and what she does. You can read through here, skills, endorsements, projects, etc. These are all really important for ensuring that her profile gets read um, and pushed up, um, excuse me, pushed up the LinkedIn search results. So building the profile. Next, you've got your profile set up. It's all looking wonderful. How do you go about actually using it and making a difference, getting somewhere with it? It's really important that you engage in order to raise your visibility, in order to build your intel about what works, and also to build relationships. In all of this, guide words for me are reciprocity and value. It's really important. If you think reciprocity, so you give to people in order to receive, that really works in terms of people then engaging with your content and talking with you and sharing your stuff. Asking, are you being helpful? Are you adding value at every point with the comments that you make? So here we are. First of all, most importantly, find people to follow. So you can search in LinkedIn by various different search fields. Google often is better than the LinkedIn search, but you can find people. If they've got their content creator profile switched on, then you can just follow them in the first instance if you're not ready to request the connection. Support them, follow them, read their content, share it, like it. Um, Thinking about if you're going to connect with them, making sure you tailor your message very clearly to who this person is, why you want to connect with them, what you want to get out of that relationship. We want to avoid spam at all costs because it turns people off. Um, as I mentioned, gather insight and intelligence. These are great places to find keywords. Job ads are great places to find keywords that talk to you and your personal brand that you can then infuse through your profile, through your title, through your about summary, and through the achievements that you can attach to the different roles that you've been in. In this role, I did XYZ using those keywords. Um, Comment on posts, inviting engagement and dialogue. Share your own insights. It's really important. There's lots of different groups that you can join. I've added a few here. In your sphere, unlike in a lot of other spheres, these groups are often very active, often technical and engineering style roles. You'll find those communities are pretty vibrant in a way that they're not so in other industries. So it's very useful. So yes, have a think about following first, supporting other people, really thinking about what you want to connect with people for, looking for intel all the time and inspiration, commenting on other people's work, and then sharing your own insights. Now, this is another question that I have for you guys. I spent a lot of time thinking about LinkedIn, but Reddit is another great place to connect with people, and there's a whole range of different Reddit forums that you could connect. There's RGIS, there's RGeospatial, there's AskGIS, there's RGIS jobs, R data science, there's a whole bunch of them. So I wondered, do you use Reddit? Is that something that you guys think is valuable? Are there other platforms or sites that you use? I'm very interested to know. I've got an eye on time, so I'm going to ask that question to you. Have a think about it and share at the end because I'm really interested to know. Like I say, I'm not a GIS expert. I'm sort of GIS adjacent, as it were. So I'm interested to know what the sort of variants are around the world and also in your particular sphere. Okay, so you've built your profile, you've followed some people, you've joined some groups. It's important now to think about your content because in order to maintain that visible and engaged profile, you need to be feeding it regularly throughout. And so planning your content is very useful exercise. It means that you don't have to permanently be thinking, oh my God, I need to post something, I don't know what to say. So first of all, get back to that UVP, that unique value proposition of yours. What do you want to be known for? What is it that you want people to go, oh yes, Jane Franklin, she's that one that does really great webinars about LinkedIn, or whatever it is that you want people to think about. What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you both good at and passionate about? That's what you should create content around. So again, look through those groups, see what people are talking about, listen first before you engage, put this content in a calendar. Here's a very simple format of a calendar. This is our own difference engine content plan, currently looking extremely empty. I better fix that. Video is the most engaging content, and LinkedIn is currently has some video functionality in beta. So you may find you might be on the beta. I'm not, but you can see it on your mobile app. Down at the bottom, there's a button for video. So basically, it is emulating the TikToks of the world and Instagram Reels. You know, the ability to scroll through mind-numbing video. So you may be able to use that in the future. Keep your content short. And then finally, it's useful to think about a ratio for building your profile. And we like the 10-5-1 ratio. So that means every week, or I think actually this is met every day, but you may not achieve that. But certainly in this ratio, 10 likes, 5 at replies or shares, and 1 post, one, original post from yourself. If you work to that, then you'll really spend some time building up that profile. Here we go again with some AI. This is just a really simple slide. These are tools that I use and I think are pretty good. Always, though, please do check for accuracy. I've used ChatGPT for research, and when I've clicked through and said, "Oh, that sounds really great, give me the source for that," ChatGPT says, "Oh no, it doesn't actually exist." So it's worth just making sure it's accurate, but also humanness, which is a genuine word, although it sounds weird. Humanness, making it sound like it's you rather than a machine writing your copy. And then staying authentic and human. It just feels like at this stage in the deck that I've given you so many things that you have to do. It's really important. You must do this, you must do that. But I think maybe this, apart from the keywords, this is one of the most important slides because actually staying authentic and human is really important. And I'm giving you a final example here. This is Georg Zoella. And he is not following my rules. As you can see, his banner up there is just grey. He hasn't bothered with picture. Uh, he has switched on his content creator thing. He's got some really great content in there, but his brand is all about being genuine and honest. He's an absolute expert in AI, and he basically pops the bubble of the hype around AI, and that's what his content is about. And it's not done in a mean way. It's done in a this is what's really going on. Let me put that in context kind of a way. And it is really useful. So he is very authentic and human in how he talks and the stuff that he shares. Yes. So I think we're almost there. When it comes to sharing those pieces of content online. It doesn't have to be broetry. I put a link in there if you don't know what that is. You will know it when you see it. Um, you don't have to follow all those rules, but I would urge you have a complete profile, really have a think about your keywords, and then when you've worked on your um, personal brand guidelines for yourself, really focus in on genuinely talking about who you are and what you care about. So, these are your takeaway actions. I really hope that you will, when you come away from this, do some auditing and develop your keywords that relate to your career. Number two, draft your UVP. Go back to slide 15, look at those um, prompts. And then number three, engage with one new professional connection in the next week. That's what I urge you to do. My questions for you are, what challenges have you been facing in building your profile? And do you have any experiences you'd like to share about AI in hiring? Begonia, thank you for coming. I'm glad you were able to share some time with us today. And finally, you can use me as your one person to connect with, although that's a bit of a cheat in terms of your actions, but I'd welcome you to connect with me, particularly to follow up if there's any questions we don't get to. And that's me.
Thank you, Jane, for taking us through that presentation. It's a lot of really interesting information, and I think very important as we all try to develop our careers and maybe get jobs, and grow our network over time. I think we can all use a lot of that information to go to LinkedIn tonight, maybe, and take a look in there and see what we can improve on. Um, as Jane says, if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat to the side, um, so we can give you more like personal feedback on how you can set up your own LinkedIn or things that are more applicable to you. We had a question before that I think you kind of touched on a little bit. The question was from Pamela asking, can you give some examples of how to convey the storytelling and authenticity through LinkedIn? Um, and I would, you gave a few examples, like with some of your last slides, but I would also add to that question, how would you convey storytelling and authenticity? Maybe if you're not a content creator, if you don't have that button clicked and you're just somebody on there, um, can you
Sure,
have
sure. So you can create content without the creator button. Literally, all it does is it changes your profile so that people can then follow you rather than connect as a first option. And you can do things like you can put your own content, you can feature articles you're particularly fond of or whatever at the top of the profile. But you don't have to do that, and you can still share content and so on. So what I would say about storytelling, um, it's such a jargony kind of a word, but really it's about trying to convey some information in a way that is memorable. And we all have stories that we can tell, depending on what our UVP is really, I guess. So on LinkedIn, you can do a post, just a short post, or you can do a video, or you can write a longer article, or you could do visual storytelling with imagery, of course. Um, One way you could do it perhaps is talking about a project that you've been working on, and you can follow the sort of story, the natural storytelling arc, which is, the sort of classic story structure is hero. This is the situation that they're in, things are normal. And then a big problem arises. How does Hero deal with the problem? This is how Hero tries to change things. There's a struggle, it's difficult, the problem is bested, and then there's a new dawn afterwards where the hero has resolved that problem. That kind of story arc is classic. People understand it. It's a great way to communicate perhaps the project that you've been working on. Um, so that's one way that you can think about storytelling. It depends on what your UVP is and what you want to share. But that kind of storytelling is really well done. It can be a case study, it can be your own project work, it could be an industry issue that you're talking about. And you can do that, like I say, with articles, post stories online in LinkedIn.
Thank you. We also had a question about how you can deal with or compensate for a large gap in your work experience. And I guess this is specifically for LinkedIn. Um,
Yeah, sure. Um, well, so there, I guess there's different opinions on this, and I wouldn't claim to be an a recruitment expert. My feeling is it really comes from my own belief. If you have a gap in your work experience, you have a gap in your work experience. That's just the way it is. There's no point trying to dress it up. You could discuss what you did in that time, and explain how whatever it was that you did in that time contributed to different skill sets and experience that you have. So maybe you were doing training, maybe you were using your skills in a different environment. Maybe you were traveling and you had to um, use different soft skills to manage that as a project, as it were. Perhaps you were in a caring role or something, or perhaps you were unwell. There are different things that you were doing in that time which isn't official work experience, but still has some value to you as a person and in your career. So I guess what I would be tempted to do myself is, like I say, not hide it, but talk about the positives from that period.
for sure. And I think LinkedIn, yeah, like Lindsay says in the chat, LinkedIn, you can add a career break section to your work history, specifically designed to let you give more context into what you're doing in
Yeah,
that time, just so you can signal to potential employers, and other people that you are aware that you are missing like a chunk of time and explain what you were doing. Um,
sure.
my question
Thanks for jumping
is,
in, Lindsay.
yeah. My question is specifically for applying to jobs on LinkedIn. If you have a lot of experience with that, um, what happens when I hit quick apply and a million other people hit it? It's so easy to do. Will anyone look at my resume and profile, or they're not even gonna bother?
I have only anecdotal feedback on that. Um, I think it's extremely difficult. I think it probably changes from role to role. Um, but like I mentioned, Google, uh, I can't remember the exact stat now, but it was something like they had 3 million applications for roles in 1 year, which is just absolutely insane. I think it does depend on the nature of the role you're applying for. But I know people who have secured roles through LinkedIn, and I know people who've heard nothing back at all through LinkedIn. I'm not sure I can add a great deal of value, but what I do promise you is I will take that question, I'll go and find you a more definitive answer, and I'll come back with it.
Thank you. That's what I usually use LinkedIn for. So look for comments. We have one last question about LinkedIn recommendations for former colleagues or managers. Is it the more the better, or do you have any general advice on those?
This is a very good question. And in looking at my profile, I realized that the LinkedIn recommendations I still have on my profile are for a very long time ago. So I guess I kind of feel I'm in two minds about it. So what it does is it demonstrates that people have taken the time to leave a recommendation for you, and that's really valuable. I think that speaks to your reputation. I think that's wonderful. So if you get a great recommendation from somebody who you value and which communicates something about the keywords that you're interested in positioning, put it up there. But I think possibly, I don't know if this is true. Again, I'm going to find out because this is my sense. On your profile, you can list up to 50 skills, and then people can endorse you for those skills. And I feel that that is possibly, arguably, more useful in terms of the AI search. I will look into that, but I think with a recommendation, I think people look at them and go, well, that's nice, but then you're never going to post that one with somebody saying, well, Joan was okay, but she was late every day. I'm not sure the information is much more than you have some friends. I don't think people necessarily take it that seriously. I think the endorsement for skills arguably has more weight. I will double check on that.
And I think with the LinkedIn recommendations, if people write something more extensive about you, that also can look really nice. You can see somebody took the time to think about whether they liked working with you and specifically point out what the experience was like.
Sure,
Um,
sure. I think absolutely if it's got some detail and context to it, then that's great.
if there are no more questions, I think that we can wrap it up. And thank you, Jane, so much for being here and presenting to us. Um, like I said, I think we'll all go take a look at our LinkedIn profiles after this and see what we can make a little bit better for the AI and for recruiters.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure to be here. I hope it's useful. Ping me any questions. If you have anything that occurs to you afterwards, I'd be happy to answer.
Oh yeah, connect with Jane on LinkedIn after this.
Sure. Okay. Good to meet you all.